everywhere else. So if you're joining us from other platforms, feel free to join me on Clubhouse. I'm at Digital Woman to ask questions live. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Nelly Yusupova. I'm a CTO, startup tech advisor, and creator of Tech Speak for Entrepreneurs. And I have been running this room since, I guess, for a year. And it's really, really popular. And there's only one agenda here is to help get you unstuck, I guess. I work with early stage entrepreneurs and help them develop their plans and strategies and processes that they need to be using to be able to manage a team effectively and efficiently, and help them cut their product development costs by up to 50%. I also teach lots of webinars on the topic. I don't know why I can't add the link to the top here, but if you click on the link in my bio or go to techspeak.co, you will be able to find the webinars there as well. And the three webinars that I'm teaching are how non-techies can launch successful tech startups, how to build an MVP without a technical co-founder, and how to cut your product development costs by up to 50%. This is something that is extraordinary to me when I work with established companies, with teams. Their goal is to optimize their process. And that's what I want to kind of set the conversation and the context for. And then I'm going to start bringing people up. And if you have a question, feel free to join us on the stage and raise your hand, and I will bring you up. Now, let's see. So, why should you focus on process? And before we go into process at all, let's talk about what is a process. So, a process is just a series of steps that you follow to accomplish a task and accomplish repeatable results of success. So, if you needed to get up and go get out of your house every morning, you have a routine, right? Those are the specific things that you're doing on a daily basis that allow you to get out of the house. So when it comes to product development and managing teams, you're doing the same thing. You are essentially saying, these are the steps that we're going to be following in order to deliver products on time and on budget. That is essentially what you're doing. And process is really, really important. So for any of you who are struggling to deliver on time and on budget, if you have a lot of delays, if you don't know how to communicate with your team properly or manage them properly, you need to be able to create a process so that you can set expectations on how things work, what you expect people to do, how do you expect them to communicate, and all the things in between. It will allow you to not only clear up a lot of misunderstandings, which account for most of the projects derailing and getting out of control, and the other pieces around the process that make it a little bit different than traditional way of building software that I teach and I focus on are lean and agile methodologies. So building products the lean way is something that I've been doing for, I guess, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the lean startup. I've been doing this prior to the lean startup becoming a thing. And so if you're not familiar with the lean startup principles, you can go check out the book by Eric Ries called The Lean Startup. It's a great start primer to get into this way of thinking. But the reason why I became such a big proponent of it is because at the time I was running Web Girls, which is a community of professional women. We had a ton of people in our community that we could have involved in our strategy, in actually asking them what kind of things would be important to them. And in fact, we didn't do that. And we just assumed that we were so excited that if we actually build these things, they would come. So we spent 9 months to a year building this amazing new functionality for our members that we thought would change the game. And guess what? When we launched it, we received lukewarm response. Nobody actually cared. So we just essentially spent 6 months to a year thinking and like money and time and resources thinking that this would be a game changer. And instead, all we could have done is asked our users what were the problems that they're facing and then create solutions that directly solve those problems. That's the lean way of building things. It's getting your customers involved. It's about iterating and taking smaller steps to get to success faster and removing the guesswork as much as you can out of your process. Instead of making assumptions, which is what all of us do when we build products, instead of making assumptions on what will work, we are essentially um, trying to de-risk those opportunities as much as we can. Okay, so give me 1 second here. I am trying to. Um, Sorry about that. I'm trying to trick Clubhouse into letting me use this other account to help me moderate things. But I think I'm just going to use the other platform. All right. All right. So we have some people raising their hands. I'm going to start bringing people up to the stage. And the goal is to start to ask questions. Mariana, hold on. Let me just invite to the stage. There we go. So building the products the lean way is completely going to change things for you. And please, when you come up to the stage, mute your microphones. Um, okay, so that way we are not disrupting everybody else.
Yes.
Yep. So if you could,
Hello.
Mariana, if you could mute your
Yeah.
microphone for a second. There you go. I'll call you in just about a second. So I just wanted to set this context for you guys. If you're not familiar with any of these concepts, again, I teach free workshops on the topic of how to build these products, as an even if you're not technical, and how to save up to 50% on your product development costs. And the link is techspeak.co if you want to check them out. All right, so let's start answering questions. Mariana, welcome to the stage. Let me know if you have what your question is, and we'll go from there.
Hi, Nelly, and hi, everyone. Yes, honestly, thank you for the story. And I just thought that didn't you test hypothesis? I mean, you should have been, you should have done this before you uh, spend so much money on development.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what I'm saying. This is years ago. The traditional way of building products is not asking your customers. It's just assuming that you know everything and build the thing, and then you go find customers for it, right? That's the traditional way. And what I'm saying is don't do that, because that was the biggest mistake of my career. And that's what started me to question, why are we doing things this way? Is there a better way? And the answer is absolutely. So that's how I stumbled into the lean way of building products and developed a methodology for building products the lean way. And of course, agile is a big part of it. And when it comes to agile, shortening our iteration cycles so that we can launch really, really fast and iterate a lot faster. And in order for you to run this process, you obviously, people on your team need to know this process, they need to be familiar with it, and you have to constantly be improving it. So, Mariana, yes, absolutely. I just wanted to clarify that I am not proposing that you all do what I did. That was a mistake that I was highlighting. Do you have any other comments or questions before we
Yes,
move on to
thank you
Dale?
very much. I also wanted to ask about no-code platforms. I
Go for
think
it.
they're growing, and Just what do you think? I think it's very relative with the topic we're discussing.
Yeah, absolutely. So using no code tools goes hand in hand with the lean way of building products. And I think a lot of people think that you either use no code tools or that's it. But the way that I teach a lot of people to think about picking the tools and the technology that you use to solve the problems is a combination of no code, low code, and maybe some custom code, right? And the leaner you go, the cheaper. The whole mantra that I teach people around this topic is learn early, learn often, learn cheap. The cheaper and the faster you can execute something in the early days, that's what you should optimize for. So if there's a tool that can help you get from point A to point B in 2 weeks instead of 3 months, you should use that tool, because what that tool will allow you to do is to launch really quickly, learn on what's important, remove some of that guesswork that we're talking about, and then you can from there iterate and improve that functionality. And let's say you outgrow whatever solution that you picked. You outgrow it. You lost in 6 months, let's say. And a lot of people say, well, I just lost this 6 months and I don't want to, like, I shouldn't have picked this solution to begin with. And that's a wrong way of thinking about it. What I want you to think about that is I've just had 6 months of learning that will allow me to, for the next version of my application, to be so much more informed. I have a lot more data points on what that actual more expensive solution will be. And that's, if you think about it this way, no code solutions are amazing, right? Because they allow you to launch fast, iterate fast, and sometimes there's so certain no code solutions that you will use for the duration of your startup. Again, it's not just picking one tool and saying we're going to build this way, but it's a combination of these tools. I have a student in my program who, for about a year and a half, was using a combination of a whole bunch of no code tools that she put together. And when she joined the program, she was non-technical founder. She wanted to learn how to work effectively with developers, uh, and essentially what they started doing is not, they didn't scrap the entire solution. They started optimizing only the parts that needed to be scaled. And that's the way I want you to think about it. You don't need to scrap the entire solution. Everything else is working. Just optimize the things that need to be optimized when they need to be optimized. So hopefully that's helpful to you, Mariana, and definitely consider no code tools in your technology stack if possible.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
You are welcome. All right, let's welcome Dale to the stage. Dale, feel free to unmic and ask your question.
Hi, Nelly. Thanks a lot, and thanks for hosting this room. It's been a major help. My question to you would be, I'm the CEO of a health technology startup here in the Caribbean. I'm based in Barbados. And I'm wondering, what are your tips for when you are dealing with, because you were talking about communication and communication problems sometimes between your team, you and your team, based on what you want and what they have to deliver. So if you're dealing with a third party development team, what would you say is the best strategy in terms of communication and making sure everything is in line with what you want when dealing with a third party development team?
Great question.
What strategies would you implement or at least follow?
Yes. So, Dale, I would highly recommend that you jump on one of the free webinars that I mentioned. It is on my website, techspeak.co, and how non-techies can launch successful startups, or how to cut your product development costs by up to 50%, or how to build an MVP without a technical co-founder. In all of those webinars, I talk about the process that you should be using. The process is what will allow you to really understand how to manage the team and how to set those expectations, and what is the communication going to be. And I think another big mistake that a lot of people make, and this is a concept called developer as a service arrangement that I basically made up. And what this means is you are managing the team, even if, let's say, you're working with a third party agency, right? The
Mm-hmm.
agency will have their own product manager, their own project manager, and their own process. But their process is created to benefit them and not necessarily to benefit you. There's not a lot of
Mm-hmm.
transparency often. They use whatever tools, whatever systems that work for them. And if you're using any of the methodologies that I use, that's way too slow, that's way too inefficient, and you're not there day in and day out to ensure that the questions that they're automatically assuming need to be X or Y, right? They're making decisions for you, and you're not there all the time to be able to address them fast enough. So let's say 2 weeks passed before you found out that they made a decision that shouldn't have been made that way. You're now recoding all of that, right? And so
Exactly.
that's why I teach entrepreneurs 3 skills: how to be a good lean product manager, how to be an amazing agile project manager. And if you're not technical, enough tech lingo so that you know how to ask the right questions, how to actually communicate, right? Because that's important. And when you have those 3 things, you now have a process that you can implement with your team, which is going to be your developers at the agency, and you work with them directly. And you set those expectations basically when you sign the contract, and you say, this is how I want to work. And that will change everything for you. I've
Okay.
coached thousands of entrepreneurs through this process, and this is the only thing that works. And I've done a lot of outsourcing, and it's just reality that agencies have a lot of clients and you're not their priority, which is why I empower entrepreneurs to take control of that process and manage them directly. And the
Agree.
process that you should be using is the TechSpeak process. And when you take the webinars or you register for the webinars, you'll see why.
I definitely will look at the webinars for sure. I definitely will take a look at it. This chat is on replay, right? Correct?
Yes, this chat is being recorded, and I actually finally figured out how I can put a link up above us.
Mm-hmm.
So I just pinned the link. So if any of you are interested, feel free to click on it. Um, and register. It just scroll down the page and pick the one that you want. And also, there's a live webinar that I'm doing on February 8th, how to reach product market fit really quickly. So that's one that you can register for as well, and that one is live. The other ones are on
Nice.
demand.
Nice. Appreciate it. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Dale. Great. Let's go to Charles. Charles, welcome to the stage.
Hi, Nelly. Thank you so much for doing this chat, you and Kevin. Appreciate it. So I just had a general question about tech startups. I launched an app last month, but I'm having trouble growing the initial user base.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried cold emailing bloggers, making social media content on LinkedIn, Instagram, etc., and word of mouth, but I'm not getting the results that I want. Do you have any tips?
Yes, absolutely. So, Charles, and I'm going to use you as an example. I'm not here picking on you. Okay. What a lot of people
Go ahead.
do is make the mistake that you've just made, is that they build a product without really understanding who are they going to be selling to. So, what in the TechSpeak process that I teach, understanding who you are building the product for is step number 1. You don't do anything at all until you know who is the early adopter for whom the problem you're solving is really, really high. It's like a level 12 out of 10 problem. I call that a painkiller. And if you don't do this work up front, you're going to be in a situation where you launch and you're not sure who exactly is going to be buying this and how am I going to be selling this? In what language should I use? What pain points can I go after? And so essentially, if you do this work up front, again, Charles, I'm not picking on you. I'm teaching everybody else through you. If you do this work up front, then you'll know before you build a product what specific solution that will solve the pain points that they have. And by the time you launch the product, you actually, a lot of my students actually try to pre-sell the product. I have a student right now who has 5 contracts, that letters of intent, essentially letters of intent, before he doesn't even have a team of developers yet, but that was the work that he has done, and he found a big enough problem that you can pre-sell some of your solutions before you build them. Now, if you're in the situation that you're in, the very first thing that I would encourage you to do is go back and do that work if you haven't done it. Really understand not just any customer, but who is your early adopter, for whom the pain point is so high that they would be willing to pay you with time and money, and hopefully both. I don't know if you're charging for your product, but getting people to give you time is also a currency. So think about that. That would be the first thing that I would do instead of going out to bloggers,
Right.
because bloggers are not going to care about some new little app when they can write about overnight
Yeah.
successes, right?
Yeah, if you don't mind, one really quick follow-up.
Yeah.
Let's say you have your niche identified. You've got your greenlit from a few people who are in the space who think it's interesting. It's a free service. Let's say, for example, it's in my case, it's podcasting.
Mhm.
What avenues do you think you would go down, or is it just what would you say about that?
Yeah. So if you're in the podcasting space, you need to understand that the types of people who could be using your service are all across the board. Are you going after podcasters who have 30,000 subscribers or 5 subscribers? They're very different needs, they have very different problems. And the people who are established, they're already using a set of tools. Chances of you convincing them to switch before your product is really, really good are slim to none. And that's the big problem. That's why it's important to understand who is that early adopter. And it's not that you're never going to try to pitch the big guys, but your product needs to be polished. It needs to be bug free. It needs to have a lot of traction, right? So that other people are saying this is an amazing tool before they can switch. So going out with a niche market and getting amazing feedback from them, iterating the product with them until you are able to pitch bigger people. That's what I would do. But really understanding who is that segment of customers who will resonate with your product. And honestly, I like, if I were an established podcaster, I would not switch, right? Because I already have my set of tools. And that's the big problem. I would go after the smaller guys and then expand from there.
Great. Thank you so much, Nelly. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Charles, thank you for that question. Let's go to who do we have? Shikel. Shikel, hopefully I pronounced your name correctly.
Hey, Nelly, how are you?
I am doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And Nelly, I've been listening to what you said, and I think it's very interesting because I'm a computer programmer myself. I class myself as an entrepreneur with programming superpowers. And what I really resonated with what you said is that you build your ideas and you build it based on what the customer's problems are. Like when I build my ideas, I build them to fail them because when people criticize them, they're actually telling me where the yeses are. And I find that very interesting. And before I answer any questions, I wanted to go to Dell. I was actually looking to set up a business in Barbados, actually. So it's very interesting that you've come on stage and I heard your accent straight away. because I was just searching.
Nice, nice.
Literally. So I do want to talk to you though, and it's very interesting because I looked at your website and I see that you use Ruby on Rails. I love Ruby on Rails.
Yeah.
Also, Charles, I had a look at what you do as well, and if you need any advice, I'd be more than happy to point you in the right direction.
Thank you, sir.
Also,
Appreciate that.
I'll send you an article, Charles, where it allows you to set up professional email addresses for free, because I see you've got a Gmail email address.
Oh,
So,
I gotta change that. I do actually have a professional email address, so thank
okay,
you.
cool. Because you can set up a free email addresses with Zoho. I don't know if anyone knew that, but if you do want the article to that, then I'll be more than happy to send that to anyone. But Nelly, going
Yeah.
back to you, is there any question you wanted to specifically ask me?
Is there any type of questions that what?
You wanted to specifically ask me?
No, I'm actually answering people's questions. So I'm inviting people to the stage who have questions.
Okay, cool. Do you know, I really just resonated with what you just shared, Nelly. I think if anyone's going to build an idea and they have not much capital, I encourage people to learn how to code. Because every idea that you have is going to change when you launch it to the public. There's no doubt in that. And I found it very interesting when you said that you built your idea. You was working on it for 6 months and you launched it and you realized you were solving the wrong problem. And this is very interesting.
Well,
Because,
Shaquille. Unfortunately, that's a lot of people, right? A lot of people who are not using lean methodologies. That's what they do. The traditional way of building products is you thinking you have some insight about a specific customer problem, but the nuances are so much more nuanced. The nuances of what like how high is that problem? Is it a level 5 problem or is it a level 12 problem? Are people actively trying to solve these issues? And right, there's so many questions that you can ask that will help you refine and remove some of that guesswork before you build. And unfortunately, I mean, a lot of technical people make this mistake as well because it's easy for them to jump in and build. And so they build a tool, and then a lot of the times it's an uphill battle. Sometimes they spend 2 years trying to um, sell the thing that they know needs to exist, but is receiving lukewarm responses. And you never want to be in that situation. You always want to know that there are specific types of customers that I can sell to, and they need my product by the time I launch. So yes, so thank you for that. And
no, Nelly, I think more or less, I would say if anyone has an idea and they launch it, I don't think they're wrong for doing that. I think that's the best thing they can do, and then focus on solving the problem when it's launched because it's gonna fail anyway. It's just how you adapt to when you uncover that problem. So, like for example, I was on Clubhouse for quite a while, and I noticed a lot of people were making business relationships on this app. But I realized that people would forget conversations. So instead of me building a tool called Backlink to Club, which it is, you can check my profile, instead of me just building a tool and selling it, I actually built it live within the community and asked them what sort of tools or what sort of features you want to use. And then that's how I've been developing it. And it's got over 419 users, and that's in the space of 6 weeks. So
yeah,
that's like,
well,
so
you built the tool specifically with those people in mind, right? They told you what specific functionalities and features they needed. And so
absolutely.
you did what I am preaching that everyone else do.
But
Most people, and this is the other thing, Shaquille, because you're a developer, it's easy for you to dive in and possibly build something in a weekend, and then iterate on that. Most developers don't build something in a weekend. They build something in 3 to 6 months, which is traditionally what it takes, right? Because they want their thing to be perfect, and have tons of features and functionalities. So what you're doing is using your strong suit. And if you're able to develop something in a weekend and you have the time and the resources, go for it. But I still think, like, if you're not technical, and there's one thing that you said, uh, if you're not technical, you should learn how to code. I absolutely actually disagree with that, because learning how to code will take time. And even if you know how to code, and by the way, if you want to learn how to code, go for it. I love when people know how to code, but just know that you shouldn't code your own software, because there's so many more efficient ways of getting that thing built. You're never going to be good enough to actually build your own stuff.
That's totally wrong, Nelly. Look, let me explain why.
Yeah, go for it.
If I say to you, you need to go to Spain, all right, let's just say if you went to Spain, do you need to know everything in Spanish to communicate with people?
But
The
you
answer
need
is
you,
no.
you need to know enough of a base,
You
which
need to have an understanding of it. That's correct, because 90% of programming is reading documentation anyway. Look, when people have ideas, it's actually beneficial for them to learn how to develop their own software. Now, let me tell you why. Because they're the only people that actually understand the problem they're trying to solve. Look, any other developer just wants to get a salary. Look, this is the point, right? And this is why I said, if you are trying to achieve something, we have to think about the capital that we have currently right now. And if we have loads of capital, then right, cool, go for it. Hire some developers. You're going to make some mistakes, and they're going to be expensive mistakes. If you don't have a lot of capital, I advise you guys to learn how to code. Because, let me tell you why. You can set up a virtual private server where you can have many
Shikel,
websites.
when you're talking to non-technical people and telling them go set up a virtual private server, they will have no idea what you're talking about.
But this is what
I
I'm
work with
saying.
non-technical founders for the last 10 years. And I know that they don't have enough time to actually jump in and learn how to code, because their goal is to build a business really quickly. And what they want to focus on is actually being the product manager, being the project manager. And your goal, actually, as a founder, is not just to do everything yourself. This is another big problem that a lot of people have. You can't build everything yourself. Your goal is to learn how to build a team. If you really want to build a company, you have to be able to understand how to outsource some of the things that are not your core. And if it's going to take you 3 to 6 months to even get familiar with coding, that's a long time to waste, right? Again, I think if you really want to learn how to code and you have the time to do it, definitely go for it. It will never, ever hurt you. Just like Shaquille says, it has a lot of advantages. But most often, because your job or a lot of non-technical entrepreneurs don't think like developers. It's much harder for them to onboard and understand the concepts, and they outgrow those concepts, if they're successful, really, really quickly. We're
I
not
agree.
talking about no code tools here, right? This is hardcore development. Now, we earlier, Mariana asked about no code tools, and learning no code tools is a lot faster. But even for some of the people that I've worked with, they were complaining that it took them three to 4 months to really become proficient at it. And that's a lot of time. That in 3 to 4 months, if you know how to manage somebody effectively and work effectively with people, which is a skill that you need to have if you want to grow a company, then I think your time will be much more efficiently spent somewhere else,
I,
doing the things that matter.
I agree, Danny, but most people in this room are probably wearing all the hats in their business to start with, which is sales, which is marketing, and many other, etc. You know, the reality is, 3 months. I I can say this. Really, what people need is a mentor, and in 3 months' time, if people were speaking to me, for example, they could build their own application like Airbnb or Twitter in the space of 3 months. If people knew that Ruby and Ruby on Rails is designed for entrepreneurs, then you would understand exactly why I'm saying this.
Well, and it's okay. So, Shaquille, we can agree on to disagree.
Oh no,
I don't want to take up too much time talking about this topic. People can decide whether or not learning how to code is for them. A lot of the people that I work with don't want to learn how to code. Their goal is to really partner up with somebody and know how to manage them. And this is what essentially I advocate for, because knowing how to manage people and how to work with them is is the only thing you need to do, right?
Hey, I have one last question.
Go
Okay.
for it.
So for someone for the people you work with that don't want to learn how to code, do they have money behind them? And two, how do you then suggest to them the solution if they fail?
If they what?
If they fail, which 90% will, probably
Well,
99.
Well, that's what if you go into and click on the webinars that I teach,
Mhm.
I would highly recommend that you go through the 10 steps. And what I advocate for is actually doing the first two steps, which are the most important ones, which is validate and build a clickable prototype. For non-technical people, and actually in fact for technical people as well, there's a lot of benefit to doing those two steps before you jump into building the product, because it'll again remove a lot of the guesswork from what it is that you're doing, and will allow you to hit the ground running and understand exactly what the MVP should be, because you know what is the core problem that you're solving. Most people don't even do that work. They don't understand the core problem that they're solving. And then they end up building, even if you're a developer and you know how to code, you end up building way too much technology to maybe realize, like 90% of the time, that you've built either an incorrect thing, targeted the wrong audience, or some other thing, right? So you have to recode. And every time you're recoding, it's time and money. So what I advocate is that this whole iterative process of learn early, learn often, learn cheap, and the first two steps are really important to really understand how close are we in terms of understanding customer problems. And everything else is based on the problem, which is why I tell people don't fall in love with the solution, fall in love with the problem, because the solution will constantly change, but the problem doesn't. Most entrepreneurs, I find, don't understand the problem that they're solving well enough to actually build the product. They're not ready. And so, if you follow my methodology, you do a lot of the things that you're talking about without actually writing code. And then I encourage my entrepreneurs to pre sell their solution and get customers, sign them on, and get paid before you build.
Okay. Well, Nelly, I'm not going to say I disagree with you without looking into the 10 steps
Okay,
that you suggested. But what I will say is I have very slightly different opinions to you.
sounds good. We're all allowed to have opinions and disagree. And I'm happy you came up and you voiced your opinion. And people in the room here, they get to decide who they want to listen to and what approach is right for them. Right? The people that I end up working with, they resonate with me, with my philosophies, with what I teach, and essentially what I stand for. And they self select. Right? It's not the only way of building software. I found after 18 years of managing developers and teams that this process works, and it's in my actual use cases the only thing that um, allows you to iterate really really quickly without spending a lot of time and money going in the wrong direction. And again, everyone in this room who chooses to follow my methodology, they choose it because they resonate with that approach. There's many other ways of doing that, the same thing. So thank you, Shaquille, for coming up and for sharing your thoughts. We will move on to, let's see, we have Dev.
Oh, is it me?
I
Oh,
think,
like the people.
let's see. I'm doing a refresh. So I'm seeing two different things on my, hold on. On my mobile app, I see that you're next after Shaquille, and then Karina, and then Sandra.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. Yeah, this is, I guess, a little bit unapologetic, but in the sense that there's 82 people, 81 people in the room. And I think, Nelly, you can probably talk on this or back up what this statement is, but it typically de-risks your startup if you have more than one co-founder in general. So kind of unapologetically, any of the 82, 83 people listening to this, I'm looking for a co-founder. I am a technical person, but it doesn't matter if you're non-technical or technical. And it's just a smart glasses startup. It has to do with Web3 and NFTs, all that stuff. But yeah, Nelly, I don't know. What do you think about that whole, like, it's a very ill decision to invest in a company that only has one founder?
Yeah, I think obviously the more founders you have, the easier things will be. So being a solo founder is really hard for many different reasons. I mean, you're handling the entire mountain on your shoulders. So it is a lot easier when you have co-founders, but there's also other challenges that are being introduced when you have co-founders, is that you have to manage different personalities, and there's a statistics that the number one reason why a lot of companies fail or never get off the ground is because disagreements between co-founders. And so, there are challenges both ways. I think it's really important to find co-founders who are not just aligned on skill set, but also really resonate with how you're going to grow the company. What are your values? Can you work with them? Do you like them? Right? You're potentially spending 5 to 7, hopefully more years of your life with these people because your company is going to be so successful. And way too many people take on co-founders. They'll just take on the first person who says yes without actually vetting the person, really understanding, do they have the same values, same views, same similar approach to things. Doesn't mean that you agree on everything, right? Because disagreeing on different things is also good for creating diversity of thought and all of these other things. But you do want to have the same values. I'm a very positive person. If I was, and I had also actually had an opportunity to become co-founders with someone who was very negative, and I just could not, like, I just couldn't see myself working with that person for a long time. There was nothing wrong with them, but they were just a glass half empty type of person, and it was not my personality. And so from that perspective, we would not have made good co-founders. So find co-founders if you're able to, but take your time and vet them, work with them, partner up on a project with them, test them out, see what it would be like to work with them.
Yeah. So what do you think? Is it okay if and this is obviously, I don't want to monopolize it. I'd probably only take like 30 seconds, but is it okay if I share what I'm doing? And then because inherently I'm in a space where people are non-technical, I am looking for somebody who is of that variety. So would that be okay to just share what I'm doing and then we can move on to the next person?
Sure, absolutely.
Sweet. Yeah. All we did, and this is just very simple, is this huge influx of art since the beginning of 2021. It's all digital, therefore you can't touch it. It's not tactile. But there's no connective bridge to purchase digital artwork in legacy galleries that already exist. So it's a little bit like Airbnb in that we don't own the space that the host owns. That's their choice. But what we're doing is we're giving devices that allow people to buy digital art via the device, and then we get the device back at some point. So basically, it's processing a microtransaction, but without the cost of, each device becomes an appreciating asset. So this appeals to anyone who's interested in doing this. I think we could slap together a team. Yeah, it sounds weird. I'm like pitching myself, but yeah, I'm very interested in getting a co-founder. It would really help because every person comes up to me and they're like, yeah, but you're a solo founder. So the answer is no. So yeah, if anyone's interested, I can move on or explain it further. And the company's name is Gallery Lens. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Dan. Dev, is it Dev? Yes, Dev. So.
Yeah, Dev.
Dev, how ironic. Glad to see you on stage. Thank you for introducing your startup. And, if anybody's interested, reach out to Dev for partnership opportunity. But again, make sure you spend some time together, make sure that you get to know each other, and make sure that there's an alignment. Because when I found out that statistic, that the number one reason why a lot of founders, companies never get off the ground or fail is because of co-founders not getting along, that makes you think. And like it's a staggering statistic. um, so let's see, I think we have Karina next. Karina, welcome to the stage.
Hi, Nelly. Thank you for hosting the room. And I can just agree with you about the co-founder and marriage example. I've learned it the hard way in one of my last ventures. Definitely take time to learn more about your potential co-founder, because it's going to be a long journey. But my question is around outsourced teams. I was wondering if you would be able to guide in a specific matter. So we work with companies, tech companies, helping them raise investment. Typically, we start working with them at pre-series A level, sometimes earlier. What happens that on certain occasions, some of the teams have outsourced their tech teams, but then they want to bring it in once the investment is in place. What is your experience, if you are willing to share, or if you have such knowledge or pointers, perhaps? What are the main challenges with moving your tech development from outsourced to in-house?
It's a great question, Karina. A lot of people don't do that transition seamlessly.
Well, we've
Unfortunately.
seen that a few times, hence
Yeah.
I thought I'd start attending these rooms.
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing is, and the reason why a lot of these transitions don't happen seamlessly is because the team doesn't document and doesn't understand enough about the decisions that were made and where everything else is how that happens, right? None of it is documented. And documentation is so important for people onboarding into your startup, really understanding what did you build, what needs to be done, how does it work. If somebody else, a brand new team has to take it over, how do they run the application, which, if it's been developed by somebody for 2 years, it's pretty complex by this point, has a lot of moving parts. So those are all things that documentation and effective and efficient documentation will help. Most people don't do it as they are building, which is what you should be doing. And so by the time, let's say, you started and it's 2 years later, imagine how much documentation is missing. Maybe you already have developers who worked on that specific complex functionality and they're no longer there. And so that some of that knowledge, a lot of knowledge gets lost. And if you want to make smoother transitions, if you're outsourcing right now, if you want to make smoother transitions, definitely start to think about creating systems in your company, understanding how to document as much knowledge prior to you moving away from the other team. The other thing that will help make the transition smoother is kind of overlapping the teams. So if you know that you want to make the transition, you could, to start talking to the dev shop and saying, we're making the transition, hire your new team, have them work side by side, so that for at least a month, so that the new team can learn the systems. It's one thing to have documentation, it's another thing to actually see them in action and be able to ask the questions real time. So that's something that, if you can afford to do that, I would highly recommend, is to overlapping the teams, so that the new team can learn from the existing team on all the ins and outs of what was done, and transition and transfer some of that knowledge as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That's helpful. I'll keep listening to everyone else as well.
You're welcome. All right, and I'm just going to quickly reset the room for those of you who are here and are wondering about the TechSpeak process and what it consists of. It's based on lean and agile methodologies. There's a link up above our heads to the free webinars that I teach on the topic, how non-techies can launch successful tech startups, how to build an MVP without a technical co-founder, how to cut your product development costs by up to 50% using this methodology. And there's another live webinar that I'm teaching on February 8th called How to Reach Product Market Fit Really, Really Quickly. So those are 4 webinars that you'll find on there that you can register for and start learning. I mean, these are free resources that you can take advantage of and really understand the benefits of transitioning to this process. The number one feedback that I get from people who actually, once they understand it, who are not using this process, is I wish I would have started 3 years ago when I just began my startup, because switching the process is so much harder than starting with that process from the beginning. But it's never too late. It's never too late to say, you know what, I'm going to focus on optimizing my process. In the how to cut your product development costs by up to 50%, I talk about, and we actually do calculations of how much money you're saving with each step. And the total, based on very, very conservative numbers, is over $100,000. And if you think about it, you can, once you understand that, you start to understand the benefit of focusing on optimizing your process so that you are much more efficient with your existing capital, which is, rather than being constantly in fundraising mode, which is what a lot of founders are. Like, we need to have more money to be able to extend our runway. But if you understand the benefit of tightening up your process, tightening up the communications, tightening up your release cycles, that will help you save a lot of money and keep all of that money in-house and extend your startup's runway. So that's the benefit of, really, if you already have a process, of optimizing your process so that your team can become more efficient executors. Okay. Great question, Karina. Let's go to Sandra. Sandra, it has been ages. Nice to see you here.
Great to hear. I was sitting here programming away. I got programming. And my cell phone popped up and it said that you were on Clubhouse. And I was like, I got to do this. But I also have a question, too. So it's really perfect timing. First of all, I want to say that I totally agree with everything that you've said so far in so many ways. And I'm a serial entrepreneur with multiple exits. And so I think finding that incredible pain point is at a 12. And I made mistakes like you did too, where it wasn't a big enough pain point. I didn't learn that until it was too late and after, a year and a half of working on something. So I've been there, done it before. In fact, I've raised over $5 million in capital over my last few years. And one of the most difficult and painful parts of building a company after you figure out the right products is raising capital. And I realized that was one of my successes. So I'm actually building a fintech company called Performa.co, actually, that will automate the process for startups or established businesses selling products or subscriptions. And it will get them investor ready in days and improve their chances of funding. It uses AI and automated questionnaires, sort of think of it as TurboTax for Performas. So when I came up with this idea, I first built everything in Excel and laid it out, made sure it worked. I talked to a whole bunch of people. I then used Tailwind to create, and obviously Figma and Tailwind to create a UX UI interface. Ended up with, right now, we have 10 alpha customers using the product, 7. And out of those 10, we addressed the issue, and yes, it's a huge pain point for them. So now they have this very sophisticated online, very great way to share with investors their pro forma. And I think 4 of them don't even have products yet, but more than 50% already have self-rounded money for their product, which is really cool. So we are moving from alpha to beta, which means I need to bring on more developers. And to your point, I'm the CEO and founder of this company. I can, we built it on Rails and Progress SQL, but I'm no Rails person. I can do Python and that's about it. So I need to get more developers. And the question I have for you is, what are some of the more sophisticated ways of identifying that they are the right developer for you? And keep in mind, with COVID, almost everybody's remote, and we're going to need some Rails people, and we're going to need some UX UI people. And so I'd really love to have your quick, watch out for these things, and these are the things you should be looking for, or how do you make sure? Because the last thing, the one mistake I remember doing, and it still is painful, I still have the scar on my back, is hiring a person that could help with the system architect and then manage those developers. And he was probably the wrong decision all the way around and wasted too much time and money. So I loved your idea and comment early on, which is work directly with people that are actually coding and interface with them, even if it's through an agency. And I have done that ever since. But how do you really know before you start getting too far down the path that developer's right skill set?
Yeah, Sandra, it's such a great question. And the answer is you really don't, right? You can have the best hiring process and you can do everything right and you could still make a mistake.
Yeah.
Right? Which is why if you look at my hiring process, it's very, very intense. There's two bits of hiring, two pieces of hiring in my process. Number one, you have to make a list of DNA qualities that you want your company to have.
Mm-hmm.
Then you need to understand the type of developer and the DNA qualities that would be a good fit for your company, right? And if you have remote, they have to be able to have X qualities, etc., right? So you have to do that work up front and think about the type of person that you need. To me, having somebody who's a Rails developer, solving for that should be secondary, because if this is a long-term hire and they're not a cultural fit and they're the first person you're bringing on, everyone else they're going to hire is going to be just like them, which is the wrong fit. And so early hires are so important, and understanding hiring for culture, hiring for DNA will allow you to start working on culture from day one and start to get the right people in place right from the beginning. It's going to make such a big difference. So first, you have to make sure that they're cultural fit. I have a very rigorous interview process to be able to do that. And then you do the technical interview. Obviously, they also have to be technically sound and good, etc. But to me, it's a lot easier to teach people technical concepts. But if they're ultimately the wrong fit, that I'm never going to be able to be successful with them. They need to be learning quickly. They need to be self-starters. I mean, all of the things that you need in a startup, right? You don't want to get somebody who worked at a Fortune 10 company and is not used to writing code and or is a prima donna and wants to do only certain things. Right? So in the early days, you need people who are really generalists, that they understand and they are willing to do everything, and they're willing to do it really quickly and not afraid to run experiments and fail and test things out. That it's a certain type of person that's the type of person that I look for in my startups. And the other really important thing, and we kind of alluded to this earlier, is no matter how good your hiring process is, let's say you do both of these steps really, really well, and you could still make a mistake. You could hire somebody who could work out for the first 6 months, and in 6 months they start to trail off and lose interest and or. So the key to hiring is to hire slow and fire fast. I mean, that's the mantra: hire slow and fire fast. And it's all about, in a startup, to me, the job of the founder is about minimizing mistakes, because you cannot, no matter how good your processes are, ever prevent from making mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, even I do sometimes, right? The key is to be able to address and find the mistakes before they become big, giant problems. And so the reason why I'm such a big proponent of working closely with your team, setting the culture, and working on these things from day one, even if you're working with an outsourced team, is because you need to be there closely enough, work with people, and understand and see those red flags, because the red flags appear way before the problems become astronomical. Sometimes something happens in a person's personal life and they already lose interest, let's say 3 months before they become really bad, and you can address that, right? And if you saw something 3 months prior, you can already prepare. You can have a conversation with them. You can see if you need to replace them, rather than waiting until it becomes a big catastrophe and then trying to deal with something.
Right. That's good. And also, I have a tendency now to overpick. Like if I have one, let's say I have one UX UI need. I have one developer that is UX UI I need. I will also find like 2 backups at the same time and only pick one, because I've found even with like COVID, they get COVID, right? And they're out for like 2 weeks, and they should be, because they have to take care of themselves. And I'm like, dang. So for those types of programming, the front end side, I will always have a backup plan, and I'm doing that also with the back end.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Because
go ahead, finish up.
No, it's really good advice on what you talked about with the cultural and DNA fit. I like that. It's good.
Great. And I just want to comment on something that you said, which was really, really important, is having a network of people that you can turn to if things, don't work out or you need some additional help. Let's say you're a victim of your own success and you need to all of a sudden build your team really quickly, and hiring full-time people takes time, as we just talked about. Finding people who fit your company culture is a longer type hire. So you should always be networking, building relationships, and doing all of these things, but always have backup people that are freelancers that you can tap into, that you already have a relationship with, that you can just pull in if you need to be able to solve additional, whenever you need those additional resources to solve problems really quickly.
Yeah, that's true. That's exactly right. It's almost like the role of the founder. That's what I do versus programming, is that networking. So if anybody's out there that's listening that is interested in what I have to say and they want help with either back end or front end, let me know. And can I also offer up that anyone that wants to be a beta customer, just reach out to me for free. It's a $3,500 savings, and I'll get you investor ready.
Awesome.
Great. I'd be interested. And also, sorry to cut in, Nelly. I just wanted to tell you that I'm interested. And also,
Dale, we're having a hard time hearing you. Can you come closer to the microphone?
You can hear me better?
No, you're far away. I can hear you, but you're very far away.
Oh.
Yes, that's much better.
Okay, cool. What it was saying is what Sandra just said. The ending part was saying that I'm very interested, so I will reach out to her, and it was also telling her that if she's interested, because my application is Ruby on Rails, and I have access to some Ruby on Rails developers, not just in my network, but also within their network. That I could probably put you onto, that you could see how best they could link you to the best persons, or if they be a fit for you. So I guess we could reach out to each other.
Thank you very much, Dale. I'll connect with you. Thank you.
Yeah, you could follow me. I'll follow you back, and we could talk. We could converse.
Excellent.
Done.
Excellent. And for those of you who don't know, I actually have a history with Sandra. Know her really well. She is an amazing founder and raised a ton of money for her past startups and had successful exits. So definitely a worthwhile person to connect with and get advice. If she's offering, I would jump on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. That's really nice. I love helping startups. That's why I'm building this. And I'm in alpha stage. Back to you, Nelly. Listen to what she says, because it's so true. That's why I did this fintech company, starting with Excel, because I know how to program it, and built it, showed it, used alpha, then did the UX UI in Figma, and now we've built it in, as I mentioned, in Rails, and now maybe it's successful, but we have a ton of beta customers ready to go, and people who want to pay, which is interesting. They wanted to just pay and skip over the beta. in the alpha, but to your point, it's super important to hear what customers have to say. So I am actually, in the next month, in March, we're actually going to have people prepay prior to launching. To your
Love
point,
that.
Nelly.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are some people that I know who, even when they have a product, for any new feature and functionality that they're building, unless they can prepay, get customers to prepay for that, they will not build it.
Yeah, I like that. I can I just share another experience too? Like when you
Yes.
talked about this, which is, so I went out and instead of asking what price would you pay for this,
Which you should never do, because
no, you
people
never
will
do.
lie.
Yes. Yes. What's the maximum price in which you feel that this would be of no value, too expensive, and what's the lowest price in which you think this would be valuable? And when I did that, it ended up being a much higher price than what I was actually going to price it out at. And
Love
I
that.
had no idea. I would have underpriced myself. And I'm so glad that I actually did that. And I did it in a way that was unbiased. So they weren't, because if somebody, what would you pay for this? Of course, I'd pay zero to get this.
Right.
But when you position it as what's the maximum value in dollars that you think you're getting, and would you pay for that? And then it's really interesting to see. And that was a learning that I just learned like 2 weeks ago. And so pricing has changed completely. And,
Yeah.
And they want one price with everything in it versus an a la carte, because they're already, the pain point is so high for companies. I've been there trying to raise money, and the company goes, great, love the team, love the product. So you have some revenue, some customers. If I give you $1 million, what are you going to look like in 3 years? And that's where it falls apart. And so I'm automating that. As I said, TurboTax at pro formas, answer questions, outcomes of pro forma, and you can measure it, because I have a big I believe if you can't model it, you can't understand it. And if you can't understand it, you therefore can't manage it. And
Absolutely.
if you can't manage it, you're not going to be successful. And in any startup, it all comes down to the financial numbers, in addition to leading teams. And so we'll tie this to QuickBooks or Xero, so it'll actually show your investors' actuals versus forecasts in a way that helps you manage the business. And because the pain point is high, the price is high. And the fact that we can show, and I'm really, if 7 people are already finding money, they don't even have a product yet, I think it's brilliant. I think it's great for them to do that. And that's because investors are like, wait a minute, I like the team, I like the idea, and you really understand your numbers well. You can talk about what your cost of customer acquisition is. You can show me what your growth rate expectations are. I can see what my return on my investment is going to be.
Yeah.
And we just do that automatically for them. That it's great to see, my pain point when I did this was horrible. What I did and the mistakes I made to build my pro forma, and I spent $15,000 outside people helping me build it, and it made me look like an idiot in front of investors that I just got so frustrated I built it myself in Excel. And now I hope to turn it into a profitable business.
Well, it sounds like you found your early adopters, and hopefully you can scale from there. And I mean, it's so much easier when you have customers banging down your door wanting your product, right? Rather than having a product with no one who visibly wants it, right? So love
a technology waiting for a solution, right?
Exactly.
That's what sometimes we fall into. And so your point, all the things that you mentioned earlier are absolutely correct. By get customers involved early on, show them the product, even if it's not perfect. Don't be embarrassed. Get out there, get the feedback, and figure out how big the pain point is. So
Great.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Sandra. Absolutely. Nice to see you again here. All right, let's take 2 more questions from Peter, and then, Amit, and then Peter, and then we will close down the room for today. Amit, welcome to the stage.
Hi, Nelly. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
Wonderful. Thank you. Is there an echo?
No, we're all good to go.
So first of all, I know there's only about 68 people left in the audience. I should say that I feel like you've been speaking to me, because a lot of the things that people have come up on stage and said, and you have responded to, have been a narration of my, I guess you could say, last decade. A quick synopsis, quick breakdown. Basically, in the early 2010s, I became a recruiter. I had no background in IT, but I got the job as an IT recruiter because I could speak well to people and build relationships. But within a few years, I realized my peers, my colleagues were making a lot more money than me. So I wanted to go and learn how to code so that I could hire people better. That took me about 6 years because I was working as a consultant, I was recruiting for other people, and I was learning to code, going to school part time. I have rent to pay, I have bills to pay. So, like I said, it took me about 6 years. In 2018, I launched my own recruiting agency where I thought that I would, change the world with a recruiting solution. But instead, I ended up just building my recruitment business, and I have a bunch of clients that I was hiring for, and life was good until the pandemic. And then when the pandemic hit, I was obviously hurt quite a bit, and very quickly I kind of went back to my passion of coding and building things, but I thought I could do it all on my own. Lo and behold, after a year of about trying myself, trying to build things, I hadn't gotten very far. And uh, as an attestament to kind of like how to hire, as you said, um, hire slow, fire fast. That's very true. And the other thing I would say, like to Sandra, for example, if you have the ability to bring some people on for a test drive, I would suggest that. So that's the same thing I did with both of my co-founders. I brought them on. By the way, I hire based on their ability to learn. So if somebody is showing a lot of curiosity and then has some demo that they can show me that they built, I take a bet on them very quickly as long as they show me that they're very passionate to learn. So both of these guys are super fantastic developers. They've been working with me now for about a year. And if you actually go check out our website at recruitforme.com, we have just finished our private alpha. We've moved to a public beta. And we are going to change the world of hiring. And I'm happy to say that, yeah, like it was a grind for the last 10 years, but ultimately that's what happens when you are adamant that you want to build it and you can build the solution and you can do it on your own. It takes a little too long. It's different for me, right? I'm young. I'm in my 30s. I have a lot of time to go. I don't have any kids. I have zero dependents. So it's easy. But if you're in a different situation in life, that's probably not the ideal situation for you. So to wrap that up very quickly, if I may, Nelly, to anybody that is looking to hire people, I have built a solution to try to help you hire people and have technical people vet the candidates that you get. So simply put, you don't actually have to be technical. You can get an applicant, get a list of applicants, and someone technical can review that for you. I'd be happy to talk about it offline. Nelly, if I can just ask you my question, it's very simple. Like I said, I hire based on somebody's ability to learn. They show me that they're curious and they show me that they have some experience in the area that I'm looking to hire. I bet on them, and I do follow the methodology of fire fast. Can I ask if there's one other thing that you use to hire or a couple other things that you use to actually vet people that you want to bring on in a technical role at a founder level? For example, I'm looking for a blockchain founder right now, and I'm looking for an AI founder right now. And I'd ideally like them to both, I can't say this, I want to increase diversity on my team. So I would like them both to be non-male founders. What would be the way that you go about hiring such people? Again, I am technical, so I can get the technical side out of it. But what are some other characteristics that you look for when you hire people?
Yeah, we kind of touched on it earlier, and the each role essentially might have its own type of DNA qualities that would make the person that you're hiring successful at it. And that's what I would start with, is defining what is that DNA quality, and then also the DNA qualities of your startup, right? Which is essentially your culture that you want to build. And the difference between hiring a developer and hiring a founder level type person are vast, because the founder level type people are even more important to get right. Because they're going to be responsible for so much, not just hiring other people, but so much strategy, setting the right foundation, etc. So really having a past relationship of some sort would go a long way, testing out as much as you can and working with them, and not just focusing, do they have the skill set? Sometimes that's not enough. And in fact, if they're just the wrong fit, it's going to be a grind to work with them. And nobody, if the founding team is not happy, everyone on the team feels that, and the team morale is going to be off. So it's really, really important for you to do some of that work up front and understand the type of people that you want. And if you are narrowing down your choices because you want to say, okay, I want a female person in that role, it's going to be even tougher for you to find that person, because there's obviously not as many, right? You're limiting your choice. But if you're committed to that, that will help create in the long term a lot more diversity, a lot of diversity of thought, make the company possibly much more attractive to a lot more diverse founders. Because if you're going into a startup, working for a startup where two of the founders are female, obviously they're going to attract a lot more females to apply in the future. So waiting, even if it's going to take you longer upfront, that might be a worthwhile investment if that is your company's DNA, and if that's going to be an intentional focus for you. But understanding that every single decision that you make in terms of the qualities that you are looking for may add to how long it will take for you to find that person. And I will repeat the statistic. The number one reason why a lot of companies never get off the ground or fail is because of co-founder relationships not working out. That's a high statistic that a lot of people, not enough people, pay attention to.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. And I do recognize the value of a relationship with your co-founders. As a matter of fact, this may sound again a little odd, but I go as far as building relationships with families of my co-founders. So, for example, one of
Absolutely.
them had just gotten COVID. Unfortunate story, and the whole family caught COVID. So I messaged his mom on Instagram, right? Like it's that kind of relationship that I want to foster in the organization. So I appreciate that. Of course, culture matters tremendously. I would also like, this doesn't apply to a lot of people, but Nelly, I know that you work with a lot of founders. So if there's a possibility for us to collab, I will back channel you and hope that that can happen in the future. And just the last thing, if I may just give a 2-second pitch, I am looking for, like I say a non-male founder because, different genders and so on, but I am looking for a non-male founder in both blockchain and artificial intelligence. These are two unique roles. The beauty of my application, Recruit for Me, is not meant to be an agency where I am the recruiter and you are the client. So I wanted to democratize recruitment where I post a job and I post a recruitment fee, and anybody can now access that recruitment fee. If they are able to find somebody relevant for the role, they can simply share that role with the individual. If they apply and I hire them, then they become the recruiter, the applicant becomes obviously the new hire, and the recruitment fee is paid out in full to the person who referred the new hire. So I have a $3,000 recruitment fee posted for the blockchain developer, and I also offer a retention bonus. So that's a little benefit to the new hire, where if they stay in the role for a year, they get an extra $3,000 at the end of that 1-year term as well. Once again, the application is ready in a public beta. There are still bugs, but I figured a lot of people are telling me, just go launch. So that's what I did. And if anybody is interested, Sandra, I'll take you up on your offer. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. So if anyone wants to have that conversation, please back channel me or connect with me. You can refo me at Amit. That's our profile and our site. And Nelly, I look forward to hearing more from you, and I will be in your rooms more often. Thank you so much for today.
You're welcome. Thanks, Amit. All right, last question for the day. Peter, welcome to the stage.
Hi, Nelly. How are you?
Nice to see you again.
Yeah, I want to thank you for the last room. This the feedback you gave me on TikTok and Facebook. It's working out great. Little by little, once at a time. Looking forward to the master class I'm signed up for. I believe it's February 8th or 6th. And I don't know. I don't know if I should say this, but like I, I'm, I disagree with what you guys said in a major way about hiring slow, firing fast, and like what's been going on with pandemic. And I've been hearing a lot from people that run businesses that they can't find people that want to work. And I like this retention bonus that I just heard from Amit. It just like resonates with me in a negative way. Like I don't even know where to start, and I don't even know if I should. I mean, are you open to criticism here or no?
You can share your opinions. I say that because I've hired thousands of people, and that from experience, it is what works. Because again, no matter how good your process is, you could still make a mistake, and the key is to address the mistake sooner rather than later. Because and then not necessarily firing that person right off the bat, right? But you need to be able to address the issue. You can give them the resources, understand why, and if it's still not going to improve, it's you're doing a disservice to your team and your company by keeping that person employed when they're not a good fit.
But then you putting it on a person that's person is a bad fit. Like
No,
person's
no,
gotta go.
that's what I said. You don't fire them immediately. You give them a chance. You understand why they're not performing. Maybe they have something personal going on, but you understanding and knowing it rather than them, uh, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's not a fit, and sometimes it's a personal situation or something else that's going on. And so,
Let me just, I'll just tell you my experience, right? I mean, I've been basically an entrepreneur basically my whole life since I was 20, but I still had, I'd say, at least 10 jobs, and from the most I was fired, and from the jobs where I wasn't fired, those managers or employers, you know what I mean, who didn't fire me, they my friends. They're like my real good friends. I'm friends with their wives and their kids like me, and if they in town, I'm the first person they would call. This kind of friends, we would send memes to each other. And the what I would how I would generalize, people that fired me are bad leaders, and
well, yeah. So
mediocre
right, and they
people.
had no integrity, and that's not what I'm saying. I always speak from integrity. I respect people. I respect the people that I hire, and I never just fire because they are not performing, right? I say address the issue, figure out how you can fix the situation or empower the person to improve, give them the resources. But if they're still not performing, if they are still sometimes not, let's say you hire them for certain things and they're just not good at it, then it's nothing that you, like as a business person, to keep that person there is not the right decision for the company if there is a
Well,
misfit, right? And so that's all I'm saying. And I appreciate your perspective, Peter, but I do need to close the room because I have to go. I
no, like one last thing I want to say
Go for it.
is, if you're a good leader, anybody will follow you. People will die for you, and they kill for you if you're a leader. If you're the
So
real
I'm going to
one.
share. So I'm going to share an example of a very specific example from my personal life. So I hired this developer years ago. This was a lot, 10 plus years back. He was an amazing developer. We had a great working relationship. And all of a sudden, he started being late to meetings consistently. So I addressed it. and I was asking, well, what's the, you need to be on time. We can't wait. Our clients waiting, and there's other people on the meeting who are counting on you, and you're wasting everybody's time. So, and the reason why was never actually given. So it was just consistent lacks and mistakes and this and that. And I tried to increase his leadership ability, to understand how to relate to other people. And I actually took on a lot more responsibility than I should have. I became his mom, essentially, keeping him on for 3 months plus, trying to change him. I even started looking back in front of our CEO, who was asking me, like, what is the situation that you can't handle? And I was saying, I'm handling it, right? Because I took on a personal responsibility for this person that was obviously no longer a fit. And I was trying to change him and give him resources, and it just wasn't working. So the day that I fired him, finally, I just, uh, took the plunge. I said, I'm just going to fire him because there's not going, like, this is not changing. My entire team came to me and they said, we were all going to quit today because we couldn't take, like, we were just shocked that you were trying to coddle this person when they were obviously a rotten apple or whatever it is, right? And so this situation was a big learning lesson for me, that yes, I could have identified that there was something wrong, but it's not my job to become their mother and coddle them into becoming a better employee when they're obviously not trying. And that's all I'm saying. And a lot of entrepreneurs are afraid to fire somebody when they obviously see that there is a mismatch, and or whatever, this person knows too much about my code, and whatever other excuse that they have in their mind, and keep that person on for way too long. And the ramifications in my situation, the ramifications of losing my entire team for this would have been huge. And they were just like shocked that I did not make that decision sooner.
All right. Can I come back with another example from my experience on Wall Street? I was managing about 10 people overall, actually more than, would be graduates from like the best colleges with the best grades in the United States. And how, the banks operate when they hire you and they pay for your Series 7, 63, 65. You got to work like just calling qualifying leads, just working for like salary before until you get your license to become your own broker. And I was also, I just become this new portfolio manager. I was killing it, and they would just give me all these new hires. It's like, yo, you teach them, and once they learn, once they get their Series 7s, they would just spread them out among the rest of the portfolio managers. And I tell you, I was doing this for like a year and a half until I left, and I never had to discipline one or fire somebody. Like never, didn't even have to.
That's great.
One time, this group of people, right? This group of guys, they got their Series 7s, and they like went on. I don't know, like the HR is calling me. So like, do you mind coming down? I went on their floor, and I see these 4 guys sitting in the HR, and the HR girls are like laughing at me, like, what did you do to these kids? I'm like, what do you mean? And they like tell him, and these guys like, we're not gonna leave you, Pete. Like, we want to stay, like, work for you. You know what I mean? This is the first job. They have no leverage in the market.
Peter, we're gonna have to stop this conversation because I do have to go. But
Okay.
everybody gets to make this decision on their own. This is a general, everything that I'm giving you are general best practices, and it's up to you to decide what kind of leader you want to be, how do you want to handle hiring, when do you want to fire. From my perspective and from a lot of experience, of there sometimes you have to make the hard decision of letting somebody go because you've made a mistake. This person is either not a fit or they're not performing. And again, you're not firing them immediately. You're empowering them. You're trying to figure out how to solve the situation. But if they're not if they're still not working out, it's your right. It's as a founder, you should make the decision to let the person go. But again, what you do is your call. So thank you for anybody, by the way, can come into the room and disagree with anything that I say. Everything I teach entrepreneurs is from personal experience. I worked with thousands of people, coaching them, advising them, seeing things in action, and I had to fire very few people in my life. But the times when I waited too long were definitely the worst mistakes that I've made. So on that, I'm going to close the room. Again, for any of you who are interested in learning more, there's lots of free resources that you can take advantage of. Click on the link in either in my bio or right above us to get a list of all the webinars that I offer. Learn the process, become a better leader, get empowered, understand that there's very fast and inexpensive ways that you can launch products much more efficiently than the traditional way. And I'm hoping that that could start off your education and you can catapult yourself to success a lot faster by iterating a lot faster to success. Thank you so much for joining me. Most likely I will see you next week. I'm either going to try to do this on Thursdays or Tuesday nights from 5 to 6 or sometimes 6:30. And I look forward to seeing you again if you come back next week. Again, thanks so much for joining and have a great evening or afternoon or wherever you happen to be. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Nelly. I hope you understand I disagreed like out of respect to you. I could have just
Absolutely.
left the room.
Absolutely. As I mentioned, anybody can come up to the stage and disagree on anything that I say. The things that I teach, again, are from personal experiences and working with thousands of entrepreneurs around these issues. And so these are best practices. They're not dogma. This is not the only way to do something. But if you resonate with me and what I'm saying and how I lead and what I say, feel free to connect with me and follow any of the things that I'm doing. Learn from me, whatever else is, the resources that I offer. So I am not offended about anybody saying anything on stage. But thank you again and have a great evening. Talk to you soon.